We just got yet another massive update from Fallout London. This being the upcoming DLC-sized mod for Fallout 4 that is really shaping up to almost be like a new game experience in the Fallout universe. And naturally, as you can tell by the title, Fallout London takes place in London. So although it will feel like a Fallout game, it'll have its own unique oddities and interesting components because it is taking place in Europe, a place we really haven't seen in the Fallout universe thus far. The team recently showed us some raw gameplay, giving us a preview of the intro of the game, and it looked phenomenal, but now they're back with a more traditional edited trailer, and this one even has a very special reveal at the end of it. But even with some of the best survival mods out there, Fallout 4 still has a bit of a problem. You can't actually play it on your phone, but today's video sponsor with Life After is going to fix that. It'll give you your full-fledged survival fix, whether it be finding and building up your own shelter, surviving against zombie hordes as you gather resources, and even the ability to collaborate with other players. This game just got its newest version, so click the links below or scan the QR code on screen here to download the game right now. Life After gives you that ideal open world survival experience on the go. You have the core of collecting resources to build up your own base that is fully customizable, and to upgrade your own gear over time to fend off a growing zombie threat. That's even had crossovers with other IPs like Godzilla vs. Kong. And new things are constantly being added, whether it be completely new maps or stories to experience that add in their own flavor, like Levin City Dusk, which will debut with an upgraded infected boss. So if you want to try the premier open world survival experience, you can download Life After completely for free right now using the link below or my QR code on screen, as well as enjoy an exclusive in-game motorcycle. Don't forget to use my gift code here on screen and have fun slaying zombies. As well as the game just got a big new update, so make sure to check out the latest version. Looking at this new Fallout London trailer, it opens in a very familiar Fallout fashion with some old school nuclear imagery and sounds. But things really start to kick off when we get this logo of the Angel faction flash on screen. This is going to be an organization and actually a joinable faction that is whispered about throughout London, although it is shrouded in mystery. And it even seems like early on as we experience this mod, they will be shrouded in mystery. We're not going to know much about them. But from there, we cut into some of these panning shots of the world overall. We get a look at the Atom Boy and even two Pip-Boys at its side here. We have heard in the past how the Atom Boy is going to be the unique Pip-Boy-like device in Fallout London. It was actually created by reverse engineering Pip-Boys. That's likely what is actually going on here. And it does look like this is being conducted by this overarching Angel corporation that almost is giving me Vault-Tec, but not Vault-Tec vibes. Vault-Tec naturally isn't really a thing in London because it was a US company. We get another look at this train. We've heard how this train will actually be fully functional. You can see it, of course, moving here. You'll have opportunities to travel by means other than foot in Fallout London. They show quite a bit of this throughout this gameplay. We get a preview of boat travel, which is described as being a feature and actually looks surprisingly practical as we traverse this swampy area. But a staple of London, bike travel will also be making a return, and it should fit in pretty well. And I feel like altogether these kind of fast travel alternatives that are being implemented with this mod seem really interesting, and I think it'll do a good job at making this experience feel fresh and distinctive compared to Fallout 4 originally, and really any other Fallout game, because there isn't much in the way of alternate fast travel by default in these games outside of vertibird flight. The panning shots of London tell a story, and I think actually reveal quite a bit. On one hand, you could see the very historical landmarks, and you could really see how faithfully recreated they are. The landscape around them has dramatically changed, but even still, these several hundred-year-old structures still stand and actually look very familiar and similar to their existing counterparts in the real world. And even further, there's just a ton of diversity throughout these environments. You have futuristic-looking architecture clashing with that old-style design. This is pretty cool because it contrasts real-world London, where you have a lot of modern architecture against old-school design, but now, since it's Fallout, of course, we are getting futuristic architecture in place of some of those modern renditions. But also, you can see some areas are heavily impacted by destruction, where some other areas are going to be relatively untouched. And one of the pretty cool things the developers behind this are doing is actually changing up the damage type. A lot of the damage done in Fallout London is going to be done by the Resource Wars, not the Great War. The Resource Wars preceded the Great War, came before it, and it was a battle between Europe and the Middle East over, as you can imagine, resources. So in the actual world of Fallout London, you'll see a contrast between places that were impacted by the Great War with nuclear devices going off versus those impacted by the Resource Wars, where you just have more traditional bombs going off. And you'll find things like destroyed planes that are remnants of the resource wars. Technically speaking, the map of Fallout London is going to be larger than the map of Fallout 4's when you cut out basically all of the un-UC areas we have in Fallout 4. And Fallout London's going to use some hub worlds to make the map feel even larger. Think of it basically how Diamond City works. You kind of enter into a separate section of downtown Boston. Fallout London is going to have something very similar to that in 5 different instances. And if you combine all of that world space also, it'll be about the size of Far Harbor. So in totality, Fallout London should be roughly the size of the Commonwealth and kind of the broader world, with those more specific locations being about the size of Far Harbor on top of it. There's going to be a lot of content here and a lot of exploring to do, and based off what we're seeing with some of the diversity in these environments, it looks like that exploration is going to be very interesting and fun. We also get a look at some of the faction bases. The world design here I think is really top tier. They have this difficult task of capturing not only the Fallout feel but also the London feel, while still trying to make things feel unique and special enough to be different. And they really do have an emphasis on making things feel different. The old factions like the Brotherhood of Steel and NCR are not making a return, and even things like power armor won't really be a thing here. The devs describe how there'll be a few boss tier enemies that do use power armor, but the player themselves will never actually get it, and the only reason those boss enemies have it is for lore reasons. In general, there wasn't power armor in London according to their lore. We get a preview of these weird, seemingly tree-loving ghouls that actually look pretty interesting. We knew Fallout London will have quite a variety of new creatures, and these guys look particularly fascinating. We get to see what looks like a raider faction of sorts that does feature a raider leader and a podium in front of him. It almost looks like this could be somewhere where you talk to this boss guy, but it definitely seems like there might be an ability to drop the floor out of this podium, and this theater location just overall looks very cool and very unique, unlike anything we've seen in a Fallout game thus far. And I think this ending montage really showcases that unique design philosophy with Fallout London, because you could just see an overwhelming amount of custom content already implemented. You can see boat gameplay through a swamp with a totally new weapon. I mean, getting to fight a bunch of enemies as you're on a boat is just insane. That's something you really just can't picture in Fallout 4, yet here it is in Fallout 4's engine being done in Fallout London. In addition to not using all of the same old factions, they're going to be using largely new weapons with this mod, so things feel unique and distinctive. And of course, a lot of the weapons wouldn't be in London. You get the experience of going head to head with some knights. These are likely going to be members of the in-game Camelot faction. Camelot basically trying to take down the ruling elite, but as you could imagine, also using knight armor. And getting in a sword fight with a bunch of futuristic knights does feel like such a uniquely Fallout experience that I'm excited to have. And this one, I feel like you don't even really have to say much about, but yeah, there is an elephant with a mounted machine gun. That is absolutely insane and just feels like it'll be such a memorable experience yet again. We get some Tower Bridge gameplay, and in the past, the developers have actually described how they spent quite a bit of time trying to get this right and make this location feel special and unique. And from there, we see a heavily locked down Westminster Abbey, and perhaps it is the child in me, but there's just something about this door. The giant, big, guarded door makes me want to go in there. It makes me excited to find out what is in there. And of course, we are in London, so there will be umbrellas in Fallout London also, with the big reveal at the end of this all being that they do have plans for this mod to come in 2023, which is pretty huge. It is rare for a DLC-sized mod project to give any sort of indication as to release, but committing to a year like this definitely feels like a good sign, and I'm not surprised. This project has been absolutely thriving as of late. The team has described how the current project has about 20 to 25 core members, with an extended team of about 60 members of people who work on the project periodically, and how they really want this experience to feel like a Fallout 4.5, which I think shows up in that gameplay. They want it to be a Fallout game and follow that overall style, and they're actually really painstakingly sticking to this, restricting themselves to some of the same tools Bethesda would use so it feels proper and true, but also just going for that Bethesda style, from the music to level design, and even just the general areas are built with the story in mind and not vice versa. In addition to this incredible new trailer, they also did a full 2-hour interview with Fallout 4 Hope that I will also have linked down below. I highly recommend you watch it. I only included some of the details details from that interview here, but overall this is easily one of my most anticipated mods for Fallout 4, as it just really looks like it's going to be such a unique and special experience. I feel like I keep saying that throughout this video, but that is really what makes it feel magical. Like, it very obviously is Fallout. There's so many of those common Fallout themes and tropes being used here, but there's also so much that isn't familiar. They show off so much unique and custom content, and it really does feel like you are stepping into a familiar but very different world. Capturing that feel is something that must have been incredibly difficult, but based off what we've seen thus far, they are really pulling that off. And now we know at some point in the next year and a half, we'll get to experience this for ourselves, which means the wait is finally going to be coming to an end. With that said, hopefully you guys did enjoy this one. Hopefully you found it informative. But with that, I thank you all again for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.